Hello, hello. Welcome. We're going to be going live in just a couple of minutes here. Just going to give people time to show up. Hello, hello. Welcome one, welcome all. Welcome to Testing with Brownie. Today we're going to do some advanced testing for your smart contracts. How's everybody doing today? Today is Monday, first weekday of the Chainlink Hackathon. I hope everybody's doing well. How are we doing? I'm seeing some people in the chat. Hello, hello. Welcome. Welcome. Glad you're all here, and thank you for being here. And I see a couple of you saying thanks for the workshops. Absolutely, that's what we're here for. We're here to make you all very successful. So, hope you're excited because we're going to be, like I said, we're going to be doing Brownie testing. So we're going to be doing some advanced testing here, and I'm quite excited for it. Hello from Texas. Hello, Texas. We're going to give it just a couple more minutes for people to join. And like I said before, the reason that we do these live, of course, is so that you can ask tons of questions and work with us and kind of see everything that's happening. So we're going to give it just a couple more minutes. And while we wait, if anybody wants to ask any questions, feel free to ask right now. Any questions before we get started? Hello, hello. Hello and welcome. And I will be giving, we will be working on kind of how those tests in the Chainlink Mix repo work, how they're set up, and basically some advanced testing, so we can, run our smart contracts, be a little bit more safe, be a little bit more secure, and write really, really good tests. Hello, hello, welcome. We'll give it like 1 or 2 more minutes. How advanced will this workshop be? If you're not familiar with Brownie, this will be a little bit difficult. If you're not familiar with Python, be a little bit difficult. But don't worry too much. I'm going to explain, as we go along, we're going to build this from scratch. So it shouldn't be too advanced, but this is definitely a really important skill to know nonetheless. So jump in, have fun, ask questions, and you'll be good to go. And yes, I will be great question here. Could you explain integration tests more? Yes, we'll explain integration or staging tests a little bit more. Funny you're doing this right now. I actually did 10 hours of testing in Brownie today, and I'll continue for the next day too. I'm excited to see more advice. Well, that is awesome to hear. Excellent to hear. And everything that we're going to be doing here is in that full blockchain, that full stack Solidity free code camp video that I made maybe about 6 months ago. So, and cool. And with that, let's jump into it. Hope everybody's doing well, and everybody who's here, please stay to the end to fill out uh, the feedback form. I'll put it in the chat now, but obviously don't fill it out until the workshop's actually over. But please fill it out at the end of the workshop. Let me post it in the chat now. And let us know how this was, right? Because we want to get the feedback from you all. We want to know which workshops are actually helpful and which workshops are, snooze fest or not that helpful. Cool. Maybe it's too early for this question, but how do you make the clear difference between unit and integration tests? We'll get there. Great question. We got a lot to cover in an hour, so let's jump into the code here. So same as before, we're going to be starting with VS Code or Visual Studio Code. If you missed kind of the intro to Brownie, intro to Remix, intro to Hard, etc., you might want to watch that first. But basically, we're building off of the videos that we went over the other day. Okay, so it can really be any code editor though, and you will need a Brownie already installed in order to do today's lesson, right? So we're not going to go over installing Brownie. If you have issues installing Brownie, leave some issues on the GitHub, leave some issues there. And all the code, is this going to work? Yes, okay. All the code that we're going to be working with. Sorry, this is for a different thing. All the code, once again, that for this lesson can be found in the Chainlink mix, right? We're going to be going over how to make these tests, how to make a repo as robust as the Chainlink mix or as really any other repo out there, right? And you can always use the Chainlink mix as your template. You can clone it, you can fork it, do whatever you want. But how do we actually write these tests in Brownie? So let's go ahead and get started in here. And to get started, we'll create a new folder. We'll call it Brownie testing. Then we'll cd into Brownie testing, and then we'll run Brownie init in here. And then, excuse me. And we're going to create a new, we just created a new project in Brownie testing, and I'm just going to open this up, new VS Code here, so that we have everything on the side for us. Like this. All right, cool. So now we have some real boilerplate, a real boilerplate Brownie project here. Let's go ahead and make a real minimalistic contract, right? So we're going to make a new contract. We'll call this, we'll just do simple storage. We'll keep with simple storage.sol. And in here, excuse me, we'll ignore that. We'll do pragma solidity caret 0.8.7. Do contract simple storage. It's going to be the fastest contract you've ever seen. We'll do uint 256 public number, and then we'll do function set number uint 256 new number. It's a public function, public, and then we'll say number equals new number. Boom! Wow, look at how fast I made this contract. If the code dot command doesn't work, what do I do? What do I have to install? This is something you'd have to look on the VS Code kind of issue forms. But if you're having trouble with this, you can also just do file open folder and then just open that folder, and that'll do the same thing. So I wouldn't worry about that too much though. File open folder should do the same thing. Good question. Now that we have this contract, what we can do is run Brownie compile. That. And boom, project has been compiled. Hooray, huzzah, yay. So we've got a real simple contract here. But the issue we might have is, okay, we don't know if this actually does what we want it to do, right? Obviously, this is a really minimalistic contract. So it's kind of easy for us to kind of just look at this and be like, okay, this does what we want it to do, right? But as we get more complicated, running these tests and building these is going to get harder and harder. So we're going to want to have a robust set of tests to do this. Now, what we're going to do is I'm going to create a new folder, and I'm going to create a folder called unit folder because, a unit folder in our test folder, because we're going to start with unit tests. Now, what are unit tests? We had a good question from somebody saying, what are unit tests? And then how do they compare to integration or staging tests? So unit testing kind of, and I'll drop a link to this. It's a method by which individual units of source code set, and I know I'm literally just reading from Wikipedia, bear with me. Individual units of source code, sets of one or more computer program modules together with associated control data, used for blah, 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 blah. That actually was less helpful than I thought it would be. Basically, it's us testing minimalistic parts of our code or very small modules, right? So just this set number function would be something we'd want to test, right? Set number is something we'd want to test. If we had another function called like update number, something, this function we'd want to test. It's us testing a single isolated part of our code, right, by itself. Now, staging tests are going to be staging or integration tests, or there's all slightly different variations of those. Those are going to be what they look like when they're integrated with other protocols, right? So often you'll see staging tests. Staging tests are going to be when they're part of a test net, right? Because those are going to be tests that those are going to test like, okay, do those addresses actually work? Does this really work on a real network? Is there some weird oddities that happen in prod that are going to break this, right? So we're testing, integrating everything with real data and with a real network. So if that's a little confusing, for now, just follow along with the unit tests, right? Just know the unit tests are us testing these minimalistic parts of our code and making sure that everything works as expected in this isolated environment. So we got a question. Tried installing Ganache CLI. Said it's been deprecated. It's now Ganache. Tried installing Ganache CLI and Yarn with npm, but failed. So yeah, so Ganache has been deprecated to Ganache. Excuse me, Ganache CLI has been deprecated to Ganache. Brownie still comes in out of the box with Ganache CLI, and everything's going to work the exact same with Ganache CLI. So you can still use Ganache CLI. If you're having a hard time downloading Ganache CLI, that might be an issue with your local setup, but you should be able to Ganache CLI -- help when you're done with Yarn or npm. If you just get a warning, that's fine. In integration, are we testing the functions one by one still, or the whole contract? You can test the whole functions one by one, but basically no, right? Because if you've already tested those singular functions that they do exactly what they say they should do, also doing them in your integration test would be like a little bit redundant. So you really want to, and this is where testing methodology kind of comes into a little bit. But you really want to have your integration or your staging tests be additive, like adding all these variables in, adding all these complex pieces in, and have your unit test be kind of this one by one, these singular modular bits, right? So that's basically the mentality there. So for now, we'll just focus on unit testing. And to do this, we're going to create a new file called test simple storage.py. And we're going to do all of our testing here in Python. Now, one of the first things that we're going to need to do to actually test this is we're going to have to deploy this contract, right? So we're going to need to deploy this. So what a lot of people will do is they'll actually, before they even write their tests here, they'll write a deploy script. And that's what we're going to do here. And because of the way Python modules works, it's kind of best practice to do this __ init.py just to tell Brownie, hey, the files in here are modules and we can import them and export them to our tests, which we'll do later, right? And then we'll, in our scripts folder, we're going to create a deploy.py script. And this script, we're going to tell Brownie how to deploy our simple storage contract. Once we learn how to deploy it, we'll deploy it in our test and then run the tests on it. So hopefully that makes sense. I installed Ganache since Ganache CLI has been deprecated and it still works fine. Awesome. That is great as well. Cool. So let's write our deploy script in here. So in Brownie, whenever we write a script, it needs to be a def main script, right? So I can do def main print sup right? And then I'll do in my terminal, I'll do Brownie run scripts deploy.py. If I don't flag a network, it'll automatically do. Oh, whoops, sorry, I have a 1 second. I have another node running somewhere else. Let me just turn that off. I was doing a lot of fiddling right before this. Let me just delete those. But you still saw sub, be printed out. But let's just do it without it. Okay, cool. Now we're printing out, or now we're spinning up a ganache, and then we see sub. And the reason in that last one, why you saw like attaching to already running, because Brownie found my other running local environment and just attached right to that and printed. So yes, Brownie is a Python-based smart contract framework. So we see sub here. So that's how we run main functions. Now, in order for us to actually export our deploy function, though, we're going to make our deploy function its own function. So we're going to say like def deploy simple storage. And here we'll do print hi. And then we'll just have our main function call deploy simple storage. That way we can still run Brownie run scripts deploy.py and it'll run this, but we can we can import deploy simple storage in our tests. All right, cool. Now, the first thing in Brownie we need to do is we need to get an account. So in here, we're going to say from Brownie import accounts, and we're going to get Brownie's fake accounts that it gets. And we're going to say account equals accounts of 0. Now, if you are following along with the Chainlink mix, though, yeah, I can't believe I closed it. That was kind of silly. If you are following along with the Chainlink mix, it actually imports kind of this account thing from this helpful scripts called like get account. And this is how I get accounts. It just makes it a little bit more modular. It basically says, hey, if you're on a local blockchain, do exactly what we just said. However, if you're going to be on like a network, grab it from the environment variable. For now, we're just going to do it like this. But in a little bit, I'll show you how to kind of do it that more advanced way. So the first thing we need to do is get an account, and then we're going to import simple storage from Brownie as well. And then we can just do simple underscore storage equals simple storage.deploy from account. Yep. And then we could do something like print storage.address. And we could even call that set number function in here. We could even call it set number now that we've deployed it. So maybe we'll even do simple storage dot set number to 77 or 777. And then we'll say from account. And then we'll do print simple storage dot number. And that'll get us the number, which would be 777. So if I run Brownie run scripts deploy.py now, it'll have deployed this to our local ganache chain, and then it'll have set the number to 777, and we call simple storage.number, we get 777. Boom, cool. Any questions with that so far? Yes, CryptoGate. The reason we added a unit folder in here is because we're actually going to be doing unit tests and staging tests. So we're just separating the two. Great question. Any questions about the script so far? This is a little bit of a recap of yesterday. Not seeing any questions. Okay, cool. Not seeing any questions. All right, great. I'm going to keep going then. All right, so we have this deploy bit now. Now I'm going to delete this updating of simple storage, and we're just going to use this deploy simple storage in our tests. So let's head back over to our tests now. Now in our tests, what we can do is we want to start writing some tests, right? And what a lot of our it's kind of best practice in Python to start your tests with the test keyword. So we'll just say test can set number, and this will be our first test, right? Test can set number. And in Python, Brownie works with the same syntax that PyTest does. So if you're similar with PyTest, all of kind of the different flags, and everything that works in PyTest works exactly the same in Brownie. Okay. So, but instead of running PyTest, if you're familiar with that, you just run Brownie test. So we'll run Brownie test. And we only have this one test in here right now. It'll spin up Ganache for us. And we passed because we don't have our test doing anything. So Brownie sees test can set number, goes, okay, great. Nothing failed in here. You did it. You passed. Awesome. So if you're still having issues with npm, it brings up npm error. You might want to, I guess I could show you how to do it with Ganache. Are a lot of people having issues with that? Because what we could do is we could change our default network. So all right, so if you're having issues with Ganache CLI, we could download Ganache instead of Ganache CLI, and then a Brownie config updated. Are you having issues with Ganache or Ganache CLI? I'm going to keep going, but if multiple people are having issues with Ganache, let me know and we'll address. But all right, so we have test can set number here. And what we're going to do is we're going to import this deploy simple storage from that script. So we're going to say from scripts dot deploy, and the name of the script is deploy. From scripts.deploy, import, say deploy simple storage. So now, and then actually in simple storage, we need to return simple storage here. And now what we can do in our test is we can just say simple storage equals deploy simple storage. Right, and same thing here. We do print simple storage.address. And then we can run Brownie test dash S. Dash S means, I forget what it actually stands for, but it allows us to actually have our prints print. And if we run this now, it'll deploy simple storage and it'll print out simple storage.address. Boom. Well, it printed it out twice because we also do that in our deploy script here. But cool. So now we have a script that we can deploy something. We can deploy a contract from. Now it's time for us to actually write some tests in here. And as our test name says, we have test can set number. Obviously, this is going to be being able to set the number, right? So typically, we want to follow what's called the arrange, act, and assert mentality of running tests. So the first thing that we do in all of our tests is we set it up or we arrange it. So we do simple storage equals deploy simple storage. Then what we do is we act. We do the action that we want to test. Here we're going to test that our contract set number is actually going to work. So we're going to say simple storage, or excuse me. Well, in order to call that function, right, we're going to need an account. So we'll say account equals accounts of 0 again. And this means we're going to do from Brownie import accounts. And then we're going to say simple storage dot set number. And then maybe we'll even do expected equals 777. We'll say simple storage dot set number to expected, comma, from account. And then normally for these, I'll do, since this is going to send a transaction, I'll say transaction equals that. We'll do transaction.wait1, which is basically just us waiting one block confirmation for this to go through. And once this transaction goes through, we should be able to assert that simple storage.getNumber, and it's even doing it for me, storage.getNumber equals expected, right? Because we updated, we called set number, and we added this expected value. And now when we call get number, or excuse me, it's not get number, it's number. Right? Yeah, it's just number. Once we call number, we should get the same value that expected is. Now to run this, we just run Brownie test as we've been doing. And we'll get a whole bunch of jarble here. and then we'll get the output right here, right? So we see test, unit test, blah, blah, test get set number, passed. So that means that it passed. Now, if we did something in here like 1, 2, 3, we would see what? We would see it telling us, nope, no bueno, you have failed. And we see failed. We say, hey, 77 does not equal 1, 2, 3. So this test has failed. Now, just really quickly, let's say I have 2 tests. And actually, I'm just going to def test dummy. Say assert false. When I run my test suite here by running Brownie test, assert false is going to make test dummy fail. So assert false, we see test dummy fail. And the reason I'm showing you this is because sometimes when we're running our tests, especially when we make a new test, we only want to run one test at a time. So what I really like to do is I'll run Brownie test -k and then paste the name of the specific test that I want to run, and it'll only run that test. So you'll see here, we won't run test dummy, and we get that. Another really powerful tool that I use all the time is the Python debugger flag. And I could do something like some number equals 7, some other number. Oh my God, I'm doing JavaScript syntax. Gross. Some number equals 7, some other number equals 8. And I could say assert some number equals some other number. I'm going to take pause for questions in just a second, I swear. And what I can do, and we know that this one's going to fail, right? Because some number doesn't equal some number. 7 does not equal 8. But what I can do is I can step into this test and kind of almost get into like a little shell for me, right? So if I run Brownie test, and then we'll do --pdb, what this is going to do, it's going to run all my tests. But any test that fails, it's going to drop into a shell for us right here. So it gives us like where we're failing. So we're saying assert some number equals some other number. It says, hey, this one's failing. Here's a shell. Now you can kind of play around and see what stuff is. So for example, I can write some number and it'll tell you, hey, some number is 7. And I might go, oh, that's weird. I wasn't expecting some number to be 7. What's some other number? Oh, some other number is 8. So this is incredibly powerful, and I use it all the time for running my tests. So I know we just talked about a lot there. And then of course, let's put it back to 8. We'll run Brownie test. The test will go, Ganache will spin up, and it passes, and we're happy. Okay. Looking at questions now. I know I just ripped through a lot. Okay. People have no such file directories, and no issues from Ganache, some issues from Ganache, same errors. I'm going to look it up too. Okay, I've already learned something new. Let's go. Excellent. Try to start terminal. Yep. -S is awesome. How do you get rid of VS Code warning on the instructions from Brownie? Not a big deal, but annoying. Yeah, so that's more from your plugins usually. It is kind of annoying. There's some IntelliSense you can do to get rid of it. In the full blockchain, Solidity course, Pi. I'll put a link to this. So this was this massive project I did. If you go to the chronological issues, we do something like this for Solidity mappings. Oh no, that's for Solidity. You're saying the Brownie is giving you errors. Oh, that's interesting. Do I talk about Brownie imports giving you issues? I don't know. So I don't see any Brownie errors from me. Maybe you can make an issue on Brownie or something, or a Stack Exchange Ethereum question. Because yeah, I'm not getting those same errors. Maybe it's just been too long. Cool. I got name error. Name accounts is not defined. Interesting. So are you doing from Brownie import accounts? Because you would need to get it from Brownie. Yeah, dash PDB is like insane. It's like my favorite thing. If you don't use the dash K modifier, it will run every function test of every file within the test folder. Yes, it will. So long as it's prepended with the test keyword. Yes, it will. I think. Actually, hold on. Let me double check. Def sum test gross assert false. Maybe if I run Brownie test, this doesn't have the test keyword. I think it'll still run it. I forget. No, it doesn't run it. Nope. Yeah, so it needs to have the test underscore in order for it to run it. For double checking. Solve the Ganache problem by adding Ganache local as default and adding it in Brownie config. Oh, perfect. That's actually what I was going to suggest doing. I'm glad I didn't have to go through it. That's awesome. Great. Instead of using PDB, is it possible to set a breakpoint in the unit test and then use Visual Studio Code Debugger? It is. So it is. I don't know the exact extension to do that. I do most of my breakpoints in Python. So I'll do like, you can do this thing where you literally go breakpoint and it'll break right here. I don't know how VS Code debugs it, but yes, you should be able to do that. But I really like the PDB debugger anyways. Is assert part of PyTest or does it come from some other source/library? Yes, assert is part of PyTest, which is what Brownie's using behind the scenes. Good question. Not sure what, about VS Code, but that's what I do in PyCharm. Awesome. Yes, you should be. Yes, you should be able to do that. I'm pretty sure VS Code can do this as well. I'm just not exactly sure what extension allows you to do that. When testing Chainlink oracles, is there a way to know what the exact oracle return value, then asserting it's within a specific range? We'll get to this. Good question. You can press Control plus Shift plus P and select Brownie as Python interpreter. Oh, well, that seems really helpful. Thank you for the tip. There's a way to mock oracles. Hope Patrick gets there. You just know exactly where I'm going here. Is Brownie's yep. IDK, yep. Is in Brownie something like hard hat yarn coverage? Yes, actually, great question. Brownie comes built in with a coverage tester, so you can run. If you do Brownie dash help, what you can see. Oh, excuse me. Brownie Brownie test dash help. There's a couple of flags here. One of them is coverage, and the other one that's really cool is gas. So ready, watch this out. Watch this. Brownie test dash coverage dash gas. So what we're going to do is we're going to test, and we're getting this first. We're getting this gas output, right? So it tells us how much on average deploying this contract costs in gas. It gives you a low and the high, right? Depending on how often you call the constructor and how often you deploy it. It gives us the average amount of gas of calling set number. Gives you the average amount of gas of calling number. It comes built in with this gas estimator for you, so that when you're deploying, you can actually see everything. Now, the other thing that it does is the other we also ran dash coverage, and we get this contract coverage report saved at blah 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 blah. If you go into reports now, we get this disgusting coverage file. And we're able to see more information about how much we've actually covered. Let me just rerun it without the gas. Yeah, these are like, that was a great question to ask. We can run Brownie test dash dash coverage. And it looks like I got 0% for simple storage. Uh, and actually that's a bit annoying. I'm pretty sure that's because we did from scripts.deploy. It's actually been a while since I use the coverage, since I do some custom stuff myself. But um, if I'm pretty sure that if you actually, let's just test it. Big question here. So let's import simple storage. We'll do simple storage equals simple storage dot deploy from 0. Now what happens if I do Brownie test coverage? No, okay, maybe there's something else. So something else to look into. I don't remember what the issue I'm doing there is, but yes, it does have an auto coverage built in, but I'm clearly using it wrong. Sorry. How can I view gas of private and internal functions? Really good question. So if you want to check the gas of those, the thing that a lot of people will do is they'll just create some function um, to like some function wrapped around their internal or private function, and then do the gas like that. So there's not, as far as I know, there's not a great way to just test those private and internal functions without some type of public wrapper around it. Really good question. Our tests, and then these will be the last two questions, and then I got to move into teaching about mocks. Are tests only for development networks, or should we also test with mainnet forks? Great question. You absolutely can test with mainnet forks. Um, you're going to want to keep in mind though that it's going to be that's going to be different, right? Because you are going to be making API calls to your blockchain node um, to constantly get the state of the blockchain. So doing mainnet forks, I recommend doing mainnet forks. I recommend doing kind of your own fresh local blockchains. It really is whatever you want to do. Mainnet forks, I think, are incredibly valuable. It can be a little bit tricky to pull in all the different types of contracts that you need to be working with. But yes, mainnet forks are really, really good. I have Open Zeppelin in my Brownie PM with proper dependencies and a remapping in YAML file. But when I try to use remapping, VS Code shows import not found. Everything compiles properly. Any fix? Yes. So you're probably just running into this. So let me post. It's probably just VS Code. It's probably your Solidity extension being upset, and that's okay. So just do like a settings.json in the .vs code folder and stick something like this in. Obviously, do like your path to your Open Zeppelin package here instead of users/Patrick, etc. Hopefully that's helpful. Okay. So now that we've done that, let's move on to testing a little bit more advanced. And I clearly am not going to have enough time to go over everything here. But one of the most important things when it comes to testing, especially when working with Chainlink, is okay. How do we work with Chainlink with all these external? Oops, excuse me. Yes, you get brownie points for showing up. How do I test all these external and all these extra things, right? Like Chainlink, for example. Like if we go to docs.chain.link, if we go to using data feeds, if this is my contract, I don't have this aggregator v3 interface contract in my local code. So how do I actually work with this? What do I do to test this when there are other contracts associated with my project, right? There's another contract, it's external. What do I actually do? Now there's two ways that we can actually test this. Readme.md. So the question is, how do I deal with, I'm just gonna say, other stuff outside my project? One of the ways we can deal with this is doing a mainnet fork. We can fork mainnet and we can have those contracts kind of automatically interact with this. Now, this is really good, but we might, depending on the setup and depending on the contracts, it might get really complicated really fast. So something that I like to do is working with mocks. We're actually going to mock, we're going to deploy our own fake Chainlink contracts and just work with them. And we'll do that for our local testing. And then for our staging test or integration test, we'll actually use the actual contracts. Hopefully that makes sense. Hopefully that makes sense. But let me show you an example. So I'm just going to grab this contract from the Chainlink documentation. I'll post it in the chat here, and I'm just going to use this as my code. Haven't worked with it before? Highly recommend you check it out. What's it called? It's called Price Consumer V3. Price Consumer V3.sol. Paste that in here. Now, of course, this isn't going to compile because we are using @chainlink/contracts in here. So what do I need to do? I need to make a Brownie config.yaml. .yaml. And in here, this is how we can define pulling in GitHub repos, pulling in dependencies, right? We need to pull in this to a project. So we're going to say compile, bulk, mappings @chainlink equals, and then we're just going to grab the smart contract kit /Chainlink GitHub repo, right? So we're just going to put smart contract kit /Chainlink to tell our project, hey, can you download this from GitHub? And the one that we're going to download isn't this Chainlink one, though. It's going to be Chainlink Brownie contracts. Chainlink Brownie right here. Oh, I just Chainlink Brownie contracts. Contracts. Go. And what this is going to do, this is a minimalistic repo for pulling in these contracts. So we're going to grab this. We're going to say @chainlink equals smart contract kit /chainlink brownie contracts. And then we pick a version. We're going to do 0.4.0 since that's the most recent at 0.4.0. Then that's actually just the remappings to say whenever you see @chainlink, point to this repo. We also need to do dependencies. This is where we're going to say smart contract kit /chainlink brownie contracts at 0.4.0. Now we should be able to do Brownie compile. And it should compile our code, and it does. Right, so this is us telling Brownie, hey, can you download the Chainlink Brownie contracts repo? And this is telling us, hey, anytime you see @Chainlink, you're really pointing to that Chainlink Brownie contracts repo, which is where we're going to get this aggregated V3 interface from. Any questions so far? Feel free to drop them in the chat. Hopefully you're all with me. Hopefully you've played with some of these data feeds. Hopefully you went to the Everything Chainlink workshop. And if you didn't, feel free to go back and check that video out. It's phenomenal. So as we can see in here, what our code does is it reads directly from this Coven price feed, and it calls get latest price on it, right? So all this really does is it gets the price from this specific contract. Now, on our local blockchain, on our local Ganache, on our local hard hat, on our local whatever, do we have this contract? No, we don't. So that's kind of an issue. So how can we test this contract if we don't have this one? Well, one of the things, like I said, we could do is we could do a fork, or we could mock this aggregator V3 interface. We could deploy our own and then work with that instead. So what we want to do is we're going to create a new folder. We're going to call it test. You can call it mock. You can call it whatever you want. And in here, we're going to create our own mock v3 aggregator.sol. So I'm going to create a new contract called mock v3 aggregator.sol. And we're going to create our own price feed contract that we're going to deploy. It's going to be a little bit simpler, but it's going to give us the flexibility to really control in our local testing, what this price feed is going to actually say, so we can easily work with it. Okay. Now, lucky for us, the Chainlink Brownie contract comes packed with a mock already for us. So what we can do is in v0.6, we can find mock, excuse me, SRC here, tests mock v3, mock v3 aggregator right here, and we can just copy and stick this into our own code base. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. I'm just going to grab this whole thing, copy it, stick it in here. Or what you can do is you can go to, if you're on the Chainlink mix, if you go to Chainlink mix, contracts, tests, what do you know? We already gave you a mock and you just copy paste that. But what you'll see is these two dots, right? So this is pulling locally from that Chainlink GitHub repo. We don't have that whole Chainlink GitHub repo in here. So we're going to have to swap out these two dots with @chainlink/contracts/src/v0.6/interfaces/blah, blah, blah, blah. And now we're good to go. So what did I just do? This before was 2 periods, right? Which in this repo, in this repo refers to, 2 directories back, interfaces, blah, blah, blah. But in our project, we just have to say, oh, it's referring to @chainlink/contract/blah, blah, 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 blah. So now that we have this mock contract, we're going to need a way to actually deploy this, this mock contract, right? Because we're going to need to deploy this so that it can interact with our price consumer. So let's create some scripts here. And once again, in the Chainlink mix that we have, in the script section, we have this deploy mocks script, which just calls deploy mocks from helpful scripts. So we just put it in a different set of scripts. What we can do is in our scripts, we'll make a new file. We'll call it deploy mocks.py. And in here, what we'll do is we'll say from Brownie, import mock v3 aggregator. Oh, and actually, before we do that, we should run Brownie compile, because we're going to need to compile our mock v3 aggregator as well, right? This is a contract. We do need to compile it, even though it's in its own test folder. Great. It's compiled. Awesome. So we're going to say from Brownie, import mock v3 aggregator, and we're going to do def deploy mocks. We'll say account equals accounts, 0. This means we're going to have to grab accounts from Brownie as well. And then we're going to say, we're going to deploy this. We're going to say mock price feed equals mock v3 aggregator that deploy from account. However, this mock v3 aggregator has a constructor of decimals and an initial answer. So this is a price feed. So the decimals of the price feed, and then, whatever the price of it is. So we can say, decimals equals 8, initial answer for equals 2000. Since that's 8 zeros, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, right? So that's 2000. Awesome. And then we'll just say decimals initial answer for its constructor parameter. So we'll do decimals initial answer like so. Great. And then we can do just like return mock price feed like that. Now we have a way to actually deploy mocks. What we can do now is we have a way to deploy mocks. We're going to want to create our deploy script for our price consumer v3, But instead of hard coding the address in here, we're going to add it as a constructor parameter. So we're going to say address, price, feed, address. And then we can just do it like this now. So when we deploy it, we'll give it a price feed address. And this will be the price feed that we've deployed, the price feed that we have deployed, so that we can have it, so that we can kind of control it for our tests. So now we're going to need a new script. We'll say deploy price feed consumer.py. And we'll do real similar to what we've already done a couple times, right? So we'll do def deploy price feed consumer s. Down here we'll do def main. Oops. Deploy price feed consumer, call that function. And then up top, we're going to say from Brownie import price consumer v3 and accounts. Do accounts equals accounts 0. First, we'll deploy those mocks. So we'll grab that. We'll say from deploy mocks import deploy mocks. And then what we can do is we can say in our deploy price feed consumer, we'll do something like if on a local network, deploy a mock. Otherwise, use a regular address. So we could say if network.showActive. So there's this network thing that comes with Brownie as well. So if the network that we're on .showActive, we'll say is development. So we'll just say development for now, but we could have any list of development chains in here. Say if network.showActive equals development, mock price feed equals deploy mocks. Right, like that. We could say like mock price feed address equals blank. And this is where we'd put like an actual price feed address, like the Coven address. And then just say if we're on a development network, well, the mock price feed address now is going to be mock price feed dot address. Like that. And in the Chainlink mix, we do it a little bit more subtly. So if you go to like a price feed script, deploy price consumer, all we do in here is we call this get contract. So we get the ETH USD price feed contract address. We call it get contract. And what this does is it looks for ETH price feed in our Brownie config. And if it doesn't find it for that network, it'll deploy a mock and just use a mock for it. So we're doing something similar in the Chainlink mix. The Chainlink mix just does it a little bit more eloquently than the way that we're actually going to do it here. So we deploy this mock. And yeah, like I said, this would be like a normal address. Once again, in the Chainlink mix, we put those addresses in the Brownie config. So you'll see like Coven, for example, the ETH USD price feed is right here, and it would just pull it right from the Brownie config. So we would do something like that here. We'd pull it right from the Brownie config. But if we're on a development chain, we're going to use our mock. So we have our mock. We have our mock address. Then we can do price consumer equals price consumer v3 dot deploy. Now the price consumer takes an address as input. So we could say mock price feed address as input. Per usual, we're going to say from account. And then we can do price consumer dot, what is the function that we call it? Get latest price. And we just print it out. So print price consumer dot get latest price. And then we can also just run our deploy script. This means on a local network. Let's try it out. We'll do Brownie, run scripts, deploy price consumer.py. It's going to spin up our local ganache. Whoops. I'm typing faster than I am seeing. That is not a good thing. Is that right? Okay, I think that's right. Let me zoom out. I'm trying to zoom in so y'all can see. Hopefully y'all can still see this. So price consumer v3 dot deploy, blah blah blah. Great, let's try that again. No module name deploy mocks from that's because it's because it's from scripts.deploy mocks. Scripts.deploy mocks. Excuse me. Try that again. Did you mean equals? Yes, I did. Network.show active equals development. Excuse me. Not is development. It equals development. Network.show active will return kind of the active network. Now we get it actually working correctly. So we deploy. You can see here it deploys the mock v3 aggregator, right? Because it sees that we're on a development chain, deploys the mock aggregator. We grab that address, and then we deploy our price consumer, which uses that address, and then we call get latest price, which calls our mock, right? Now, if we go back to deploy mocks, we updated this to like fifth or that number. We ran this again. What do you expect we'll see? Well, we'll see the 5, right? So we see the 5,000 instead. And now that we have this mock here, right? We can use this in our tests. So we can do test price consumer.py. And I'm going to go really quick because we're running low on time here. So we'll do def test price consumer. Up top, we'll do from scripts dot deploy price feed consumer, import deploy price feed consumer. Returning this, no, so we'll return price consumer. Deploy price consumer and our deploy price feed consumer function. Say price consumer equals deploy price consumer. And then we'll say, then we'll also do from scripts.deploy mocks import we'll say import initial answer. Import initial answer. And then in here, we'll just say price consumer dot get latest price equals initial answer. And we can run Brownie test -k just to test this one right here. Oh, whoops, this needs to be a cert. Right. I'll just like quickly finish this out. Try that again. Cert price consumer dot get latest price equals initial answer. And boom, we do indeed get that is true. And right, if we did 777, run this would indeed fail. Boom, perfect. All right, cool. So we're at time. I can go a couple minutes over though. If people want to see some other stuff, this is the last workshop of the day. So I'm happy to go a little bit over and I'm happy to answer a ton of questions. So questions, comments, concerns. I'm going to scroll up. It looks like I missed a whole bunch of questions ripping through this. I hope this was helpful. I know we went through this really quickly and we saw, okay, that's how we're actually going to do our test with Chainlink contracts. We're going to use these mocks. If you're familiar with forking, you can do mainnet forking as well. If you're not familiar with forking, great, just use the mocks. In the Chainlink mix that we have all this mocking kind of done for you, right? So if you go to the contracts, tests, there's already all these different mock contracts in here. And like I said, in all the scripts, we have kind of this clever we do kind of this clever thing where get contract here, it checks to see if VRF coordinator is in the Brownie config. And if it's not, it'll deploy a mock one for you. And that's how we can always just have, get a coordinator address, no matter if we're on an actual network or on a local network, and make everything look kind of nice like that. Now, testing with an actual Chainlink node it's a little bit different. You still deploy those mocks, but with those mocks, you actually pretend to be the Oracle contracts too. So you'll see, like if you look at the test API consumer or test VRF, you'll see we deploy the API contract, right? We deploy our consumer contract, and then what we do is we get the Oracle contract ourselves, and we pretend to be the Oracle contract, right? And the reason that we do that is because obviously on our own local networks, there's not any oracles, there's not any Chainlink nodes listening for events. So we just go ahead, we pretend to be those Chainlink nodes ourselves in our tests to work with to basically simulate how Chainlink would work on a development chain. And then once everything works there, then we go to a what's called the staging test as a absolute last step. And we run all of our transactions without pretending to be the Chainlink nodes and seeing our responses there. So hopefully that makes sense. Let's answer some questions. When you expect the test to fail, how do you know the error will be a virtual machine error or gas estimation error and whatsoever? Good question. I think I know what you're referring to. I think I know what you're referring to. Yeah. So typically, if in my contract I have like something like let's say, require message.sender equals like, I don't know, OX blah 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 blah. Like this is something I'll know is gonna error, right? This is gonna be a virtual machine error, right? This is gonna result in a revert, and my deploy function is gonna fail because message.sender won't equal whatever address this is, right? And so that's how I would know that that's a virtual machine error. The longer answer is, run your tests, run your scripts, run your code, and see where it errors out. And if it isn't erroring out where it shouldn't, you have an issue, and that's good. And that's why we write tests. Hopefully that answered. I'm not sure if it did. Let me know if it doesn't. So we deploy mocks when we use imports, not matter the test network. No. So on a test network, we don't want to deploy mocks, right? Because on a test network, those contracts exist. The reason that we're using mocks on our local networks is because those contracts don't exist. So, and this is why we're also in this unit test section. So if you look back in the tests, I didn't separate them out in different folders, but let's go to test price feeds. Actually, so get contract, what it's going to do here, if you're on a test net, it grabs this FUSD price feed contract address from your Brownie config, and it doesn't deploy a mock. So it's kind of clever that this one line is smart enough to go, oh, okay, you're on a local network, we're going to deploy a mock. Oh, you're not on a local network? Okay, great. We're going to deploy a mock. Excuse me. Sorry, one more time. Get contract is smart enough to go, you're on a local network, deploy a mock. Okay, not on a local network, you're on a test network or a mainnet. Great, we're just going to use whatever address you supply us here. Hopefully that is clear. I believe the -- show internal flag. Have a look at Brownie test -- help. Oh, that seems really cool. Brownie test -- help. Interactive, stay full, fail fast, blah, blah, blah. Show internal. Include Brownie internal frames and tracebacks. Oh, that's sick. There you go. I use mocks for development / local networks. Yes, exactly. Yes. Hey, excellent. Awesome. Thanks, Andre. What would be the reason to use Brownie over, say, Hard Hat? Great question. And the answer is if you like Python better, or if you're coming from a classic fintech world, or if you don't want to deal with JavaScript, or maybe you want to work with Viper, or maybe you want to use the same code base that Curve or Yearn.finance is using. It really is whatever you want to do. Now, when I say this, I want to stress something. And let me just go back to me. I want to stress this. Oh, just kidding. My camera's off, so there's nobody there. Now my camera's on. Hi. I want to stress something. Pick a framework, stick with it, and just go. Don't second guess yourself. Hard Hat, Brownie, Foundry, ApeWorks, Truffle. It doesn't matter, right? Everyone's going to have their opinions on which one's better and which one. At the end of the day, it really doesn't matter. Just pick one and go. I would say Foundry, Brownie, and Hard Hat are going to be mature frameworks for you to use, and they will give you a good time. So pick one of those three and go. Have fun. Yeah. On regular test network, there should be some oracles listening to requests, but only exactly. On a test network, there are going to be Chainlink oracles there, right? Like on Coven, on Rinkeby, etc. On mainnet, there are going to be oracles, so we don't have to pretend to be those oracles because they're already there. Great question, and thanks for jumping in. Very based, absolutely, yes, of course, important. Going to try it again to find out in events. Oh, and before you go, and I know I'm way over and people are already dropping off. Please, if you can fill out that feedback form, would mean so much to us. I'm going to paste it here. Please fill out the feedback form. Let us know if these are helpful. If they're not helpful, if you're like, hey, I hate these, I'd rather you just, coded an NFT or something like that. Whatever you like, just let us know. Hey, Patrick, how do you go about testing keeper functionality? Mocking 2. Yes, Mocking 2. Great question. I'm going to see if there's any other questions here, because if there are no more questions here, I can go through a keepers example. But yes, Mocking 2, and you can see that in the Chainlink mix. There's a keepers mocking example in that Chainlink mix. If you fork instead of using mocks and you deploy your contract, does your contract go to the local chain? But when you interact with the Oracle contracts, those are on the testnet. Is this how it works? Not close, very close. So mocking, or excuse me. So forking, you don't actually have the oracles listening, right? Because what you do is you fork a real chain to your local chain, right? So there's no oracles there. However, all the contracts that are on the mainnet or the testnet or whatever you're forking get pulled into your local chain. So whatever their state is going to be reflected on your local chain. Now, this can be really good because you don't need to deploy those contracts anymore, but it can be a little bit tricky because then you have to be the one to fiddle with state and go in and update those contracts on your local chain so that they do what you want them to do. Still really good. And I do mainnet forking a lot still. It is really good. I think the simpler approach, just to kind of get your feet into it, is going to be doing the mocking. And it's really powerful for kind of very quickly getting specifically what you're expecting your code to do. But forking is really, really powerful as well. Just some of the tooling might be a little bit different. If somebody wants to actually fork the Chainlink Mix repo and do some examples where everything is done on a forked chain, where they update state or something, that would be awesome. Would love to see that. Hopefully this was helpful. The reason is Python is just easier. Chromore is a beast, very helpful member of the community, helping a ton in that full blockchain repo. So thanks for being here, Chromore. And asking great questions. Again, please fill out the type form before you leave. I'm just going to kind of answer questions here. I'm going to answer questions here, and if people are down, we'll go over Keeper's example. Is there any way to make the test async in order to wait? Let's say VRF returns the randomness, because using TX to wait is really arbitrary. Good question. Yes, that's a longer conversation than what we have time for here. um, but yes is kind of the answer. It's the tooling isn't set up in a great way to do that. Um, but essentially, yes. It would look kind of ugly though, right? Because whatever local chain you're using is going to be synchronous, right? It's going to do one block at a time, so you're going to have to wait anyways, right? What you could do, and this is where it gets kind of gross, is you'd have to spin up several local blockchains and then run your tests on each one of them, and that could potentially make your stuff a lot faster. So you would have to wait less. So hopefully that answers the question. Always learn new tricks. Excellent. That's what we're here for. Sweet. Thank you for the kind words. Thank you all for the kind words. Really appreciate it. All right, cool. So yeah, so the person who asked about keepers, if you want, we can see a keepers demo. Otherwise, like I said, you can go to the test repo. You can see we have a test keeper in here, and it's real small. It's real simple. So what we do is we deploy our counter contract. So we have a contract called counter. It's our keeper compatible contract. And then what we do is with keepers, it's actually a lot easier because we can just pretend to be the Chainlink keepers ourselves without even having to register the contract. So keepers is actually even easier to work with because there's no contract that we need to interact with. So we literally just counter.checkupkeep.call. We call the checkupkeep function, and the reason we do .call here is just in case your checkupkeep is a view or a peer function. This just doing .call here forces the or excuse me, doing the call here other way around. Doing the call here just makes it so that we don't send the transaction. But yeah, and then we just say, okay, hey, assert upkeep needed is a boolean, perform upkeep is perform data is not, and this could probably be a little bit more robust. If somebody wants to make a PR to make this a little bit cooler, feel free. So, all right, all. Well, it looks like there are no more questions here. So I want to say thank you all for being here. Hopefully you all learned something. It sounds like some of you did. Please fill out that type form. It means a lot. It gives us feedback on whether or not you all care about this stuff or not. If QR codes are easier, maybe leave that in the feedback to do QR codes instead. And we'll see you next time. Tomorrow we have an amazing schedule, so be sure to check out the workshops for tomorrow. Really looking forward to seeing everybody there. All right, bye all.